Hello Commander players, this is Jumbo Commander with a brand new deck tech straight out of Amonkhet. It's Temmet, Vizier of Noctimoon. Temmet is a white and a blue for a 2/2 legendary human cleric, and he reads, at the beginning of combat on your turn, target creature token you control gets +1/+1 until end of turn and can't be blocked this turn. Alright, we got a little bit of pumping and evasion for creature tokens. It's an interesting strategy. Temmet himself can become a creature token because he has the new ability Embalm. That reads 3 white blue, and you can exile Temmet from your graveyard and create a token that's a copy of it, except he's a white zombie human cleric. Temmet's going to gain a lot of value because we can cast him more often than the average commander. You can cast him from the command zone, then when he dies, choose to send him to the graveyard only to embalm him. And the embalm cost will not suffer from the commander tax. But the token of Temmet is not the same as the commander Temmet, so the token of Temmet does not have commander damage. So there's a little bit of a trade-off if we wanted to go sort of all in on Temmet damage. But I don't think that's a strategy we want to use. I think we want to focus on this token synergy. Clearly with Temmet, we want to make some tokens. And not just any tokens. We want to make big tokens. Because Temmet's going to pump them and get them in for damage. I love white token makers. I love making soldiers and birds and cats. There's so many great white tokens, but the problem is they're all pretty small. If we look at Temmet, we get the most advantage out of having a big creature because it pumps a single creature and gives that single creature unblockable. Well, white does have angels. I mean, I'm not saying that it doesn't have any big tokens, but it's really good at pumping out lots of small tokens. Now, when I think of blue token makers, things get a little bit better. I can imagine an 8/8 octopus, a 9/9 kraken, so there are some beefy tokens in blue. I should make sure to have those as inclusions, but also now I'm thinking about it, blue is great at putting tokens that are also copies of creatures. Now that's where we can get a lot of value. Especially if we have really unique tokens. Now that I'm thinking about it, Temmet gets creatures in unblocked. There are a lot of rewards that I can see when you can reliably get damage in. So I think we should take a look at what kind of tokens we can produce and what kind of rewards we can gain if we have unblocked creatures. Now, some of the most powerful tokens that come to mind can go in any deck. I'm thinking 2020 Indestructible Avatar from Dark Depths. I'm thinking of a 10/10 Desolation Twin, or an even bigger Phyrexian Processor Black Minion creature token. And all of these could be great inclusions going in Temmet. But I'm going to leave these on the back burner, maybe revisit them a little bit later. I want to find out how Azorius deals with tokens, and I want to start off with an obvious inclusion, a brand new card called Anointed Procession. 3 and a white for an enchantment. If an effect would create 1 or more tokens under your control, it creates twice that many tokens instead. This is a color-shifted parallel lives, and we know how powerful that enchantment can be. Anointed Procession will find its way into many commander decks, and we welcome it to this one. But now, let's focus on making some tokens. Oh, Stolen Identity, one of my favorite cards, underplayed like crazy. Take a look at it. 4 blue, sorcery, put a token onto the battlefield that's a copy of target artifact or creature. So an overcosted ability, 6 mana to create that token, but it has Cipher. Ooh. So you can kind of cipher this sorcery onto a creature, and whenever that creature deals combat damage to a player, I can cast Stolen Identity again. Remember Temmet, okay? The whole point was getting awesome creature tokens and then finding advantage from unblockable creatures. This is perfect. You can get an awesome creature and then you can make him unblockable with the cipher and then keep getting more stolen identities. This is great. So this is kind of the theme of this deck. I would love a deck filled with stolen identities and Temmet as my commander, but we got to move on to other token makers. Let's talk about Cackling Counterpart. Simple. Instant speed, make a token, you get some flashback on that. Dance of Many makes a token for very cheap, blue, but you got to pay an upkeep. Supplant Form, an excellent 2-for-1, allowing you to bounce one of your opponent's creatures and create a token yourself. Remember, all of these creature tokens will synergize excellently with Temmet. Let's keep going. How about Saheeli's Artistry? Create a creature and an artifact. Let's go even bigger with Clone Legion, a 9-mana spell that basically copies every creature your opponent controls. But you know what? I think even better. Rite of Replication, another 9-mana spell, because we know we're gonna kick this spell to get 5 creature tokens onto the battlefield. Followed Footsteps. This is an enchantment that will create a brand new creature every turn. I'm really drawn to the newer version, Mechanized Production, which does the same thing to an artifact and has a very cool win condition attached to it. Embalm is a great mechanic, but we kind of had it before. If we look at this great old school enchantment, Back from the Brink. 6 mana, does nothing. No, just kidding. It sits on the battlefield, and then you have the ability to kind of embalm anything in your graveyard. You can exile a creature card from your graveyard by paying its mana cost, and then put a token onto the battlefield that's a copy of that card. And you can only cast this as a sorcery. This will allow you to change in creatures that had already died and get those tokens. If we want to get some tokens, I think there's an excellent suite of artifacts available to us. Soul Foundry, Mimic Vat, and Minion Reflector all allow us to put great creature tokens in. I particularly like Mimic Vat because you can sort of put your opponent's creatures under the Mimic Vat. So you have access to creatures that you wouldn't normally have access to. You know, I'd love to just start making Grave Titan tokens. I think that sounds great. Or, you know, Avengers of Zendikar. I mean, I have dreams, guys. There's an excellent token maker called Fairy Artisans. Oh, this card is so much fun in Commander. I really like it. Fairy Artisans creates a creature token that's a copy of the most recent creature your opponent's played. The downside is that if they play a new creature, the old one goes away. So basically you get the enter the battlefield ability of every creature each one of your opponents play. It can get pretty awesome and pretty good. Now, I've been talking a lot about making tokens, but I really haven't been talking about what we're actually copying. I know I'm going to mention some fantastic things that could be on the board. Your opponents play something insane and you copy it, and I love that. And that will happen a lot of the time. But I think you need to bring your own good stuff to copy to the battlefield. Now, you could start off just making tokens. We could make some angels with Decree of Justice, and if that doesn't work, make some soldiers. Heck, we could even make birds. You know, we could make some golems. And actually, I could imagine making a cool golem deck. This would be really low to the ground. We can get in damage early and then get in unblockable damage to finish it off. I could imagine a deck with Blade Splicer, Master Splicer, Wing Splicer, Precursor Golem, all this awesome token synergy. I think some of the best things to copy will be creatures that make tokens themselves. That's why I love these splicers so much. Let's think of a few other creatures that come with awesome tokens. How about Reform? Oh, I can see this happening. You put a silly little Reform in and eventually you get to a 9/9 Kraken. That your commander can turn into a 10/10 unblockable. Amazing. Mirror Sigil Sergeant is 6 mana for a 4/4 trample. Not a good rate until you wait a turn and you happen to have 2 of them. You wait another turn and you have 4. Another turn you have 8. And you just keep getting more and more Mirror Sigil Sergeants until you overwhelm your opponent with rhinos. We can also copy creatures that help us copy. How about Scion of Vitu-Ghazi? This creature has a great enter the battlefield ability because it gives us a bird and allows us to populate. Now the populate mechanic is very interesting. If I'm populating a 10/10 Eldrazi, I'm feeling very good. If I'm populating a golem, it seems to be okay. But if I'm populating a bird, I don't know how I'm feeling about that. So populate can be a little bit weak. The access that we have in these colors are cards like Eyes in the Skies, Rootborn Defenses, Wake the Reflections. I think Scion of Vitu-Ghazi might be interesting enough, but I don't know if these other cards are going to make it. I think that some of the best cards to create copies of are going to be cards with enter the battlefield abilities. Those are the cards I want under a Mimic That. Those are the cards I want to be flashing back with Back from the Brink or making extra copies with Cackling Counterpart. I would like to embrace this enter the battlefield strategy. So I think we should think about Panharmonicon. Ooh. But you know what? That's not really central to our deck idea, so let's kind of move away from that. I can imagine this deck being very close to a toned down Brago deck, and actually that's why I have him gracing the art in this section of the video. I have a Brago deck, and it's awesome. I'm not advertising Brago right now, but it's really great. It's actually powerful and oppressive, and there's a few infinite combos, and it's very, very good. Now, imagine a Brago deck that doesn't have this sort of flicker, but it still has that enter the battlefield value. That could be this deck. As you play an enter the battlefield creature and then you copy it. You maybe get it back from your graveyard. Maybe you make a token with it. It sounds like it could be interesting. Same kind of principle, that is getting multiple triggers out of enter the battlefield creatures, but not to the same extent and the same type of strategy that Brago has. Maybe we take our own little angle. I think that Temmet has a place. It's not going to be as powerful as the traditional Flicker decks, but it is going to be interesting, unique, and very fun. Just a quick mention, we're going to want cards like Cloud Blazer, give us card advantage, keep moving through our deck, let us copy it, or a card like Diluvian Primordial, just super powerful. But most importantly, Archaeomancer, we're going to want to have a creature that gets us back the spells that copy the creature. So if we have an Archaeomancer, then we Cackling Counterpart it. Well, we can just get another one of those spells back. It's going to be great. Let's take a look at the toolbox that we have for all of these great tokens. One of the first things I thought of when I saw this commander was Germ tokens. Now, Germ tokens are the tokens created by these living weapons. Most famous, Batterskull. Man, Batterskull is a great piece of equipment, and it comes with a creature token synergizing perfectly with Temmet. Batterskull also equips to your other creatures, maybe those ETB creatures that have kind of used up their value, and then give it new life. Also consider a card like Bone Horde that can be insane against certain decks. Scythe Claw. Let's take a look at this 5 mana equipment with living weapon, and the equipped creature gets +1/+1. We'll have a 1/1 Germ. Amazing. No, wait. Whenever equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, that player loses half his or her life rounded up. I really like this effect. I think it's hilarious. You have a little 1/1 Germ, and you'll make it into a 2/2 with Temmet, but make it unblockable, and then cut someone's life in half. This is the kind of effect we want. It synergizes with tokens, and it synergizes with unblockability. Wonderful card for this deck. And I've been looking for a place for a new Germ token creator, Grip of Phyresis. 3 mana instant, gain control of target equipment, then create a Germ. So I want to be snatching equipments from my opponent. I'm super excited. I guess also if you wanted to, you could gain control of your own Batterskull and save 2 mana on the equip cost at the cost of a card. No. Grip of Fire Resist might be a very narrow card, but I think it's going to be hilarious. Plus, look at the little germ wielding a Sword of Body and Mind. I mean, I love it. There are a few swords that could do really well in this deck. Although they don't come with their own token, they do have excellent abilities when they make contact with one of your opponents. I like to think of Sword of Feast and Famine, allowing you to untap all the lands you control and having your opponent discard a card every so often. And Temmet's going to let you get damage through. One little downside to the swords is one of my favorites is Sword of Fire and Ice. And it doesn't quite synergize with Temmet because Temmet has to target the token in order to give it unblockability. And Sword of Fire and Ice gives it protection from red and blue. So you do have to pay attention to what kinds of equipment you use in this deck. If we're going to be running a lot of equipment, let's include Stoneforge Mystic and Trophy Mage, letting us get a lot of those important cards straight into our hand. Sublime Archangel. If we happen to go wide, say create a few extra soldiers, have some tokens on the battlefield, Sublime Archangel can sort of redirect the massive army we have into a single unblockable awesome creature. Sublime Archangel says, other creatures you control have exalted. That means that every other creature on the battlefield can pump up the single token that we're getting through with Temmet. And I think that's the kind of approach we want. You might be tempted to run a card like Intangible Virtue, pumping your creature tokens and giving them vigilance. And that's a good rate, 2 mana for that ability. But it just isn't impactful enough. Just a simple +1/+1 maybe isn't the direction you want to go. I also think that there's a lot of different cards that give +1/+1, and maybe this one isn't quite the best. Another synergy I really like with unblockability is the Monarch. The Monarch has been one of my favorite mechanics to include in Commander. Canal Courier is a little bit expensive, 6 mana for a 3/5, but you become the Monarch. That basically means you get a card, so Canal Courier is excellent, and whenever Canal Courier and another creature attack different players, Canal Courier can't be blocked this combat. Ooh! So Temmet makes one of your stupid tokens unblockable, Canal Courier can attack someone different, and you can regain the Monarch or just get some extra damage through. That sounds great. Let's keep going with Keeper of the Keys. Again, you become the Monarch when he enters the battlefield, and at the beginning of your upkeep, if you're the Monarch, creatures you control can't be blocked this turn. That is a powerful effect, giving all of your creatures unblockable, allowing really powerful tokens to just mow your opponents down. And you know what? Even if you don't want to go full on Monarch, it might be a good idea to just throw a Throne of the High City in there. Because Temmet provides unblockability to your creature tokens, it's an advantage to have the Monarch enter into the game, because you're going to be able to confidently regain the monarchy. Let's talk about a few artifact synergies that you could decide to run in this deck. Now, I already mentioned Mechanized Production, a really great and fun card. And if you want to use this aura, you might want to stack up on a few artifacts. And there's another card that helps out a lot too, Cogwork Assembler. If you have enough mana, you can create one-off tokens of very powerful creatures. Let's just run down the list of powerful artifacts with ETB abilities, maybe ones that we can copy with Mechanized Production or copy with Cogwork Assembler. One of my favorite cards to copy is Solemn Simulacrum, and he's not the only artifact. How about a Duplicant for removal, a Myr Battlesphere for just winning the game, a Torrential Gearhulk to flash back those copy spells to copy another Torrential Gearhulk to flash back the... How about a Filigree Familiar because he's so cute, or a Pilgrim's Eye to keep hitting those land drops, Precursor Golem, make more golems if you're going to go that golem tribal, or a Sandstone Oracle to just refill your hand. These are a lot of really valuable artifacts that you could use if you want to go in this sort of artifacty direction. A lot of the deck I've described just deals with creatures. Let's make tokens of creatures, let's get ETB abilities, let's get creature combat through. But all creatures does not make a very good deck. we have to have a little bit of utility so that we can make sure our creatures have a big impact on the game. Crush of Tentacles can reset the board, and it could get you an 8/8 blue octopus that is excellent with your commander. I do have to say though that Crush of Tentacles is a little bit of a non-bow because many of your opponents will get their real creatures back to their hands, but you will get tokens going to the graveyard. There's also Descend Upon the Sinful, a board wipe that leaves a 4/4 angel creature token on the battlefield behind. But it does exile your creatures, and you would really like to have your creatures go to the graveyard so you can use cards like Mimic That or Back from the Brink to gain extra value. I think there are a lot better board wipes out there, including Hour of Reckoning, very expensive but has Convoke and destroys all non-token creatures. Phyrexian Rebirth, which leaves a huge horror token behind, and Ixodron, which turns creatures upside down, making them tutus. Ixodron can get you out of games that you have no business winning. By the way, it doesn't turn all the creatures face down, it turns non-token creatures face down. This deals with hexproof creatures, it deals with indestructible creatures. It is a powerhouse and you should run it in your deck. That has been Temmet, Vizier of Noctamoon. And this Azorius commander is very interesting because he's pretty fair and balanced no matter what your playgroup. You can always copy some of your opponent's creatures, get a little bit of damage in for free but not a lot. Maybe get a little bit of enter the battlefield value but not as much as a Brago or another broken commander. I think that Temmet rides a line between a really fun commander deck but just powerful enough to win. I think that if you're really going cutthroat, you're going to pick a different Azorius commander, but I have to say, this guy is super flavorful, very interesting, and a really compelling choice. I want to thank you for watching. My name is Jumbo Commander, and I make Commander deck techs. Last week was Hapatra and the -1/-1 counter Snake Creator. It was a very fun deck, and if you'd like to check that out, go ahead and click here. Otherwise, I'll see you next Wednesday for a brand new exciting deck tech. Thanks again. Bye-bye.